Learning how to swim as an adult is tough, but it gets even harder when you receive bad advice from inexperienced swim instructors. In today's video, we are going to review the top 10 worst pieces of advice our students have received from inexperienced but well-intentioned swim instructors. Number 10 has to do with side breathing and freestyle, and that's make sure you keep one eye and one ear in the water at all times. Now, this is great advice if you are a competition, experienced, elite level swimmer, because that is ideal technique. But if we're first learning how to swim freestyle, this is not applicable to you, because the goal of turning our head to the side to breathe is being able to get more air so that we can keep swimming longer distances. And if we're trying to turn our head to the side while focusing on keeping one eye and one ear in the water, it is way less likely that you're going to be able to get a full breath. Number 9, again, has to do with freestyle, and this is a big one because it impacts many of you learning how to swim freestyle, and that is do not allow your arms to slip through the water. Now, this is a very important term that can be confusing, so let me break it down for you. When our arm enters in freestyle, slipping means that our elbow is lower than our wrist, which means that we're not going to get any pull of the water behind us, which makes us create propulsion to move forward. So instead, what we want to say to make it a little bit simpler is when our arm enters in freestyle, we just want to maintain a higher elbow than our wrist in the water. And that makes sure that our arm is catching this water or being able to properly pull it behind us, as I mentioned, so that we can go forward. Number 8 has to do with kicking, and it is some of the worst advice that literally makes me want to pull my hair out when I hear our swimmers have been told this, and that's just kick harder. This is horrible advice for 3 primary reasons. Number 1, our legs are our biggest muscles in our body, so they eat up a lot of oxygen. What does that mean? When you kick harder, you get tired, and much more tired, much more quickly. This is not a strategy that helps you learn how to swim for a sustainable period of time. Reason number 2, foundationally here at Caribe Swim, we teach our students that trying harder is never the answer to being able to swim better. We want to create a relationship with the water which is built on our relaxation and learning how to use the fundamental properties of water that actually help hold us up. We're never able to do that if our sole focus is outworking the water or trying harder so that we can swim simply from point A to point B. And reason number 3 is that normally when we're first learning how to swim as brand new swimmers, our kicking technique is just a little bit off. And until we've had time to really perfect our kicking technique, most of the time kicking actually retracts from our efficiency in the water. It doesn't help us become more efficient swimmers. And so kicking less is normally the right way to go about swimming in the early days of learning how to swim more proficiently. Worst advice number 7 is swim in a smaller tube. Yeah, you heard that right. Swim in a smaller tube. My first piece of feedback for you is if you are hearing this as a brand new swimmer, I would probably look for another instructor, because as well-intentioned as this instructor is, swimming in a smaller tube applies to you being more hydrodynamic in the water and really being able to consolidate the amount of space that you're swimming in to increase your efficiency. And this really applies universally to competition level swimming. It does not apply to you as a brand new swimmer. Let's face it, you have enough to think about: staying buoyant, learning how to take a fresh breath, ensuring you don't drown. So then thinking about staying in a small tube, it just doesn't apply. That's enough of that. Let's move on to number 6. Bad advice number 6 is control your breathing. Now, I think when most swim instructors are delivering this information, they're really well intentioned because it has to do with trying to mimic what Olympic swimmers are doing. When Olympic swimmers have their face in the water, generally they're exhaling for the majority of the time their face is in the water. So when they turn their head to breathe, the only thing that they're doing is inhaling. The difficulty with this advice, however, is that as new swimmers, we should not be trying to mimic what Olympic level swimmers are doing. We need to have our own process entirely. And here at Caribe Swim, how we teach that is having our new swimmers hold your breath so that you're not having to think about all of this controlled breathing in the early stages. And then when we turn our head to breathe or lift it forward to breathe, we're just simply exhaling, then inhaling to get that breath. And it tends to be a much simpler and a much more easily implementable technique for brand new swimmers. Bad advice number 5 has to do with swimming freestyle more efficiently, and that's exaggerate your glide. Now, what this means is when we're putting our arms in the water, we want to make sure that we're really reaching as far as we can to increase the efficiency per stroke that you're achieving when you are swimming freestyle. But I think exaggerating your glide tends to be really confusing and it's hard to implement as a brand new swimmer. So instead, what we do at Caribe Swim is we just implement a simple drill called catch-up drill, which ensures that one hand touches your second hand every time before we can start the next stroke in our freestyle. And this achieves 90 to 95% of the same thing that exaggerate your glide will achieve, but it's a lot simpler for new swimmers to interpret and to implement early on in your freestyle progression. Bad advice number 4 really gets under my skin, and that's telling new swimmers to just relax or don't be afraid without the next follow-up steps of how you actually desensitize the body or begin learning how to relax to begin using the properties of water that are beneficial for you. The strategy on how to relax is so important. It's as if you are trying to not be relaxed or you want to be scared when you're in the water, when nothing could be further from the truth. All you want to do is be relaxed or not be scared, but you're not given any of the advice that comes with it. So if you have heard this and you want more support on learning how to relax or how to not be scared in any depth of water, I urge you to join our Adult Learn to Swim community. You can find that link in the description below. Bad advice number 3 has to do with kicking, and that's to kick from our hips. Although this is technically accurate information, how do we do that? Like, I'm thinking as a professional instructor who reached some of the highest levels of the sport of competition swimming, I don't think I would quite know how to kick from the hips. Generally, what it means is that you're generating your power of your kicking from up in this region of our hips. But I think that's way more complicated than it needs to be. So generally, as you are learning how to kick, there are only a couple of things that we need to focus on. Number 1 is making sure we have our toes pointed and that they're not flexed. Number 2, generally try to keep a relatively straight leg as we're kicking. It's okay to have some knee bend. And number 3, always kick 20 to 30% less than you're currently doing. Less is more as it relates to our kicking technique in the water. But as far as kicking from the hips, I think we just set that to the side. Bad advice number 2 is one of the most widely pieces of inaccurate advice that I hear from inexperienced swim instructors, and that's teaching our new students immediately to blow bubbles. Now, this is really poor advice early on in your learn to swim progression because air in our lungs is what creates buoyancy in the water. So being able to hold onto air in our lungs is extremely important as we are first learning how to float in the water and use the properties of water that help support us and hold us up. So when we put our face in the water, if we are exhaling all of that air out by blowing bubbles, what happens? We start to sink in the water. And this is really detrimental to brand new swimmers who are first learning how to create buoyancy in the water. And it tends to be a shortcut to actually creating more relaxation for you in the water. Here's what I mean by that. As you are putting your face in the water, learning how to hold your breath for the first time, many adults, when they put their face in, have a reaction like this, and water gets up your nose. How a swim instructor addresses that up front, instead of helping you relax more so that your body creates its own natural seal, is to exhale air out of your nose to create that seal so water doesn't get up. Does that work? The answer is yes, but it comes at too great of a cost this early in your learning to swim trajectory. So instead of blowing bubbles, here are two things that you can do. Number one, you just take a deeper breath. If you inhale as much as possible and you get to a point where air can no longer go up your nose, you have now created a proper seal where water cannot get up your nose. So that's strategy number one. Strategy number two is to go through the Caribe swim, learn to swim relaxation process. When you are 100% relaxed and going into the movement of putting your face in the water slowly, water will not get up your nose. That happens, water getting up your nose, when we are not relaxed and we create that own experience for ourselves. So, is there a time and a place where bubbles are important? Yes, but it's always later on in your learning progression than when most instructors try to use it. Come on, ankle. I just need you to get more flexible so I can kick. The worst piece of advice that we hear from inexperienced swim instructors teaching new swimmers is make your ankles more flexible, okay? This has to do with implementing early on how to flutter kick. Kicking with a flexible ankle generally means that instead of having our foot in a flexed position like this, we want to have it pointed, or our foot pointed more like a ballerina like this. But what really has this at the number one slot are the number of our students in the past who have literally come to me and said, Coach Jeff, can you give me some stretches to help increase my ankle flexibility at home? And when this happens, I think we've just completely missed the boat. While I love when my students want to do work from home to improve their swimming, what we have our students do at Caribe Swim is focus on breathing from home. Focus on reframing any of their negative beliefs that they have about the water, about their past experience, so that we can develop a better connection when we're in the pool, in the water, and learning how to use the water to our benefit, instead of simply focusing on our body and our technique and how to break down small movements, which tend to overcomplicate our thought process, which makes new swimmers perform less well in the water. So, to bring this all home, what I would like for you to do is to join the Caribe Swim community by clicking on the link in the description below so that we can help you develop that connection with the water, help you learn how to relax, how to use the properties of water that help hold you up, and to simplify the entire Learn to Swim experience. And we do all of that inside of our step-by-step courses, which can be found inside of our community by clicking on the link in the description below. You guys, thank you so much for joining me inside of this video, and I can't wait to see you in the next one.